Welcome to Tardisian Files.
Hello listeners! What a dazzling episode we had last week. Not only did Doctor Who take this era's trend of breaking the fourth wall to a whole new level, but we also saw Doctor Who get the Mary Poppins treatment with a blend of animated and real life acting. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In this episode, we will be reviewing Lux, and taking a good long look at some of the clues surrounding the overall arc for this season, and addressing some of the theories that have also been leaked online. Without further ado, let's jump right in. To recap, the Doctor and Belinda find themselves in 1952 Miami after the TARDIS fails to return to the 24th of May 2025. The Doctor plans to use a device called the Vortex Indicator, or Vindicator, to set anchoring points throughout time to allow them to navigate back to Belinda's native time. While in Miami, they stumble upon a locked-up cinema with a spooky reputation. At a local diner, they learn more from the waiter and a mother of one of the missing that no more than 15 people have mysteriously vanished inside the cinema. And yet, the films keep playing after dark. Inside the cinema, things get surreal fast. They encounter Mr. Ring-a-Ding, a living cartoon who turns out to be none other than Lux Imperator, the god of light and a member of the Pantheon of Discord. The cinema's projectionist, Reginald Pye, had been playing old films for Lux in exchange for a reincarnation of his late wife. Lux has trapped the missing people inside a reel, and soon enough, the Doctor and Belinda get the same treatment, turned into cartoon characters themselves. They escape into another fabricated world, this time facing down all of Lux's tricks, including a simulated scene with a racist NYPD cop, to breaking through a television screen into the supposed quote-unquote real world, where they meet fans of Doctor Who. These fans know they're not real and urge the Doctor to go back and stop Lux, using their meta-knowledge of the plot to reveal to them how to defeat him, even though they believe that by defeating Lux, the Doctor will erase them in the process. Holding the film reel in place, causing it to burn, Belinda and the Doctor arrive back in the cinema, where things escalate. The Doctor uses his regeneration energy to heal a burn on his hand, but Lux hijacks this process to siphon the energy to form a physical body for himself. Belinda rushes to use the stored tapes as an explosive, and in a final stand, Pye, encouraged by the visions of his wife, sacrifices himself to trigger an explosion. The blast opens the cinema open to the street, allowing sunlight to pour in. Having been brought to light by moonlight, the sun overwhelms Lux, causing him to grow until he dissolves into the universe itself. The missing people are restored, and the Doctor and Belinda leave. As the episode wraps up, it leaves on a cryptic note. Mrs. Flood, having seemingly followed the pair to 1952, hints that this entire quote-unquote show will end on the 24th of May. While the Doctor's fans, still somehow self-aware and existent, discuss the events when they realise that they're still alive. The episode then cuts to the next time trailer. Okay, so if I thought last episode was a little bit mind-blowing with all the temporal distortion, this episode definitely took that to a new level with the literal breaking of the fourth wall. So, starting off with the pros. First of all, there's the Vindicator machine. I personally like this plot point as it made it very clear early in the episode that Belinda has remained with the Doctor because he does have a specific plan to get her home, but now they actually have a reason to deliberately visit different places in order to effectively calibrate the Vindicator to provide them with a clear route through the vortex back to May 24th. Additionally, there were a few Easter eggs in this episode, such as the line, 60% water but you can still drown. This was a Tooth and Claw reference, which I personally loved. Additionally, the episode did subtly address the 1950s racial segregation, which I do think is Russell T Davies' way of acknowledging the very same points that inspired Dot and Bubble of racism being a problem for all eras, not one that's just confined to the past. However, the fact that all the characters in this episode who were from 1952 didn't care much that Belinda and the Doctor are both persons of colour, ultimately because they seemed to see that the pair wanted to help, was quite refreshing. It was a nice reminder that while it was definitely safer for the pair of them to leave by sunrise under the cover of moonlight, both the Doctor and Belinda were able to move around freely, and not everyone in this admittedly very shameful era of human history were prejudiced, and they were capable of looking past preconceived notions in the name of finding their loved ones. And this episode did that very well, I thought. The episode also did a very good job of keeping the resolution obscure right until the last act of the episode. The dots were all there, but it was only until the Doctor and Belinda formed a plan, with the help of the meta fans, that we actually start to get it. The film could be used as an explosive, which would have been their main weapon against Lux, but we didn't understand how until it happened. The exposure to the sun overwhelmed him, and Belinda used the tape to blow open the cinema so that he would be exposed to the sunlight. The cartoon meets reality theme of this episode was also pretty amazing. Not only did it create for some amusing visual gags, with Lux having to finish the song that Mr. Ring-a-Ding had to sing, and also being limited to his physical capability for being a 3-foot-tall cartoon, but it also made for a type of mind-warping trap for the Doctor, which gave us that meta scene with Hassan, Lizzie and Robin. Let's face it, if the Doctor and Belinda really did fall through any of our screens, we would all react in the same way, surprised and overjoyed. It really warmed my soul, and it definitely made me laugh. Speaking of which, that meta scene. Okay, so this era of Doctor Who is no stranger to breaking the fourth wall, with Mrs. Flood doing it habitually this season, and even in this episode. But not only did this scene take this trend to a whole new level, but it served several purposes. One, to make fun of fans in a light-hearted way, mentioning the leaks and alluding to how the fandom typically jumps on most theories that are put out there. Two, to help move the plot along. And three, set these meta characters up for some future plans when it's revealed that they still exist after Lux's defeat, making me wonder if they were actually creations of Lux or somebody else. But more on this in a bit. This episode did have a few cons, however. The main one, which was a bit of a bugbear of mine, was Lux was a lot weaker than any of the other gods that we have actually seen on the show so far. The logic to his defeat does make sense. Beat the Toymaker at play, find the right tune to banish Maestro, force Sutek to face death to undo death, show the Mara its own beastly nature, negate the chaos that summons the Trickster. Beating the Pantheon always involves using their own nature against them in some way. But Lux's defeat, I think, was just a bit too easy. If it was like the werewolf, where they actually had to use a contraption to focus the light, or overexpose his film, like Torchwood 3 did to defeat the Night Travellers, then I would have understood. But no, it was a case of basically just open the cinema out to the street, and then Lux just dissipates. It doesn't really count as a defeat, in my opinion, as it is kind of what Lux wanted, except now he's just part of the universe and presumably cannot influence it anymore. Also, the meta fans even said this at the end of the episode, but the plot was effectively given away midway through. Not necessarily to the audience, but the fact that Belinda and the Doctor were just told what to do in a way that wouldn't cause any sort of time paradox, while creative, did lessen the hype somewhat, because it meant that the audience were no longer trying to figure out how to defeat Lux alongside Belinda and the Doctor. We just became bystanders, which caused some of the meta magic that Doctor Who typically has to wear off a tiny bit, and I didn't like that as much, I will say. Now, before we get on to the conclusion for this review, there are a few clues and theories in this episode that I want to discuss. The first theory is that the fan characters were creations of Mrs. Flood. This, to me, would explain who she's talking to every time she turns to the camera, and not just that, but she has previously claimed to have plans, implicitly for the Doctor, but she can hardly put them in motion if he's beaten before she's ready for him. We also know that she's following him through time, and has foreknowledge of the catastrophe that hits Earth on May 24th, 2025, which in real life also appears to be the date of the penultimate episode of the series. So what if she's planted these meta-characters to ensure the Doctor would beat Lux, all the while maintaining the cover of them being projections of the Light God, with them believing their own cover story? On the subject of May 24th, I have heard one theory that the main villain of the season, who Mrs. Flood may or may not be, might be the God of Stories. This has actually been a running theory since Mrs. Flood entered the picture, with people viewing her as either the God of Stories herself or their harbinger. But regardless if it's true or not, the theory goes that the date of May 24th was chosen to represent the penultimate episode, and the main villain with meta powers may be intending to cancel Doctor Who in the penultimate episode, which the Doctor then has to undo in the series finale. Now, this may be a little bit of a stretch because, for clarification, the rumours that Doctor Who was being cancelled was first reported on the 17th of February 2025 by the British tabloid The Sun, which this podcast does not recognise as a reliable source of information, and the BBC were very quick to denounce these rumours as false. So, the rumours of the show being cancelled doesn't have any truth to it, seemingly. However, it would be a bold statement by Russell T Davies to write such a rumour into the plot of the show. There's no concrete evidence that this has happened, but stranger things have happened on the show before, so I wouldn't put it past him. Another theory concerning the meta-characters is that their mentioning of the leaks could be a subtle way of Russell T Davies telling us that he deliberately put some of the leaks out there to mislead us, although others may be true. This comes from the very obvious line spoken by Robin when she said, "Well, I knew because I saw it in the leaks." Russell definitely knows that plot points get leaked. It's practically part of his promotion campaign for each new series that he writes. Take, for example, the visible framed magazine cover with Susan Twist as a nominee for some CEO award in an interview before season 1. However, suffice to say, with social media, the definition of leaks has become a bit blurry, with online theories often making discerning between genuine leaks and hearsay quite tricky. Hence why I personally chose not to delve into them too deeply before starting the review of this series. That said, I think that this meta-scene gag may have served the purpose of perpetuating theories and indicating to us viewers that some of the leaks may have had some truth to them. Because think about it, if Robin was wrong about the supposed leaks, then the plan that the three of them gave the Doctor and Belinda wouldn't have worked, but it did. So if our fictionalised counterparts were right about this episode, maybe we as the real-life audience, with our leaks and theories, may also be right about some things as well. And final theory for me, the Doctor Who fan meta characters, are they being set up for something else? Are they the unholy trinity mentioned in the synopsis for the reality wall? Before we begin, I would like to credit Curious Adipose on YouTube for this theory, and I have linked their video on this very topic in the synopsis of this episode. So, first off, what is this unholy trinity? Well, we don't know, but the most likely explanation on the theme of gods are the gods of Ragnarok. These gods, first mentioned in this era of Doctor Who by the 14th Doctor and Mel, were one of the show's early forms of going meta. In the plot of the greatest show in the galaxy, these godlike beings acted as judges of the psychic circus, and represented producer John Nathan Turner's feelings towards the BBC higher-ups, being these all-powerful beings who decided which shows or performances got to stay on the air, in light of the show's declining ratings in the late 80s after its hiatus in 1985. So why are they the most likely choice for the Unholy Trinity? Well, because they keep getting mentioned. First in the Giggle, and then in the Empire of Death, the threefold deity of malice, mischief and misery. Not a direct reference in the Empire of Death, but then not all the gods in the Pantheon are mentioned by name in Harriet Arbinger's monologue. Say, Lux, for example. He wasn't mentioned at all. So, how does this link to Lizzie, Hassan and Robin? Well, observe. First, they say they don't have any surnames, to lament that they are in fact not real, except in the credits of the episode, these characters do have surnames, and we see this right after we see them discover that they still exist. Additionally, it appears that their reality comprises of watching and judging Doctor Who, just like the Gods of Ragnarok were doing in The Psychic Circus, representing the BBC, but in this case these characters represent Disney Plus and the fandom. And what if the line #RIP Doctor Who, again likely a joke at the rumours started by the Sun tabloid, also serves as an indirect hint to the trio's true nature? Now, personally, I do think that the meta-nature of these characters does make them a contender for another godlike being. However, given how much they love the Doctor, and the villainous nature of the Gods of Ragnarok, I do think that they'll play more of a supportive role in this series, not an antagonistic one, if they do appear again. That said, will the Gods of Ragnarok return, with these three as some kind of anti-harbingers? Possibly. That brings us to the end of this review. Overall, this episode was certainly a unique story in the Pantheon of Gods arc, and it seems to have opened up a lot of possibilities for what the overall story arc of this season might be. What did you think of this episode? Let us know in the comments of your favourite streaming app, or in the comments section of our social media posts for this episode on Instagram and TikTok, at Tardisian Files Podcasts. We also have a Blue Sky account now under the handle at Tardisian Files BSky Social, where we will not only be posting about new episodes, but we'll also be using it to engage with our lovely viewers to hear more of your ideas and feedback. Please leave a like and subscribe, and as always, see you next time on Tardisian Files.